Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm Chris Krug, publisher of the Center Square. Everyday Economics is brought to you by the Center Square. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Friday, January 31st, 2025. And joining me, as always, my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, it's a very interesting week, to close out the month of January. I think, there's been no shortage of conversations about AI and AI being, integral to the future. I think a lot of people were sort of kind of tracking along and looking at the players in the market that had already come along. ChatGPT, probably, OpenAI being the chief among them. And certainly there are a lot of mostly U.S. derivatives, that have been brought to market. And all of a sudden, China rolls out this product called DeepSeek, and it just in a very stunning way, it created market chaos. Certainly, for people who hold Nvidia in their portfolios, you might have noticed a little bit of a downward bump, almost like falling down a flight of
A little
stairs.
bit, a little
Yeah,
bit of downward burn. How about what, 17%?
trust me. I think my phone nearly caught on fire from the alerts that I
Yeah,
was getting
yeah.
about the market. I believe that was on Tuesday. So nonetheless, I mean, let's talk about this. DeepSeek comes like literally out of nowhere. I mean, in theory, China has restrictions on chip technology that the United States has imposed upon it. But they apparently found their way to enough of NVIDIA's chips to be able to create something that was pretty remarkable. But the underlying, I think, market issue was that the people at DeepSeek said that they had built this thing on maybe, what was it, $5.5 million. Meanwhile, there's been billions of dollars invested in AI, and that just created, mass confusion, I think, in the market. What do we
Yeah.
know? What have we learned
Well, I
here?
mean, look, I think you summarize it pretty well. Like, why would an investor be concerned, right? If we're able to get this kind of technology at a lower cost, then this could put downward pressure on like AI subscription pricing, shrinking margins for companies like OpenAI, Google's AI division, right? Why pay for the cost of, I don't know, a Microsoft solution when you can get the same for much cheaper, right? And
Right.
so, and so, all the big tech stocks that had been uh, bid up essentially by AI, right? The promise of AI, right? Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, right? Basically took a massive hit.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and so that's why we saw what we saw. Um, it kind of, I guess it kind of reminds me of this question of innovation versus kind of adaptation, right? So like you kind of if you're using uh, if your new technology is basically using some existing technology to create something that is uh, more affordable for the end user. Is that a good thing or not? Does it violate some sort of patent law? And I'm not a lawyer, by the way. I'm asking all these questions because I wonder. I remember.
You could have been. Your parents are already pretty proud of you, but you could have been a lawyer too. I mean, the PhD thing. I guess some people are impressed by that, but you could have been a lawyer and a PhD.
I think lawyers are smarter. So
No,
during
I don't know.
the pandemic, right? We had this whole thing between uh, Pfizer and Pfizer biotech using mRNA technology to rapidly create effective vaccines. And in August 2022, Moderna filed a patent infringement lawsuit against Pfizer and biotech, right, alleging that their vaccine had infringed on Moderna's patent related to mRNA technology, right? And so I guess the question is, how do we balance this thing, right? How do we get, I mean, good news for the end user, for sure, right?
Well, competition ultimately is. I think though that I want to go back to the investor because I mean there were a lot of people who had to change their diaper this week. I mean that was pretty stunning. I mean pretty stunning. I mean you hadn't heard anything in the market or anywhere around the market where it wasn't Nvidia, and this thing just looked like it was sort of an unstoppable locomotive. Meanwhile, it sounds like over in China in some garage somewhere for $5.5 million, they build something that frankly is supposedly was every bit as good. But already there's issues. There's issues with it. I guess a couple of things. One, why did the market act like that? Why did the market just completely lose its mind? I mean,
well,
what?
well, I brought it up, right? So if consumers have access to cheaper technology, to the technology at a much lower cost, then how much can you charge for it, right? So remember, investors bid up prices, right, in the stock market because they expect earnings to grow into a company's valuation. And so, right, so you're bidding up this company, and because you think that future earnings will be large enough, or earnings will grow enough to justify the valuations that you've put on these companies, right? And if of course, and by the way, that's why we talk about PE ratios, right? Price to
Right,
earnings.
right, 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 right.
If it just turns out that the company fails to generate the type of earnings or even profits that you had hoped that it would, right? Then the company is overvalued. And what tends to happen then is the stock drops, the stock falls, right? And so that's what was kind of playing out this week, where the question became, are those companies perhaps overvalued? And that's what caused the big stock sell-off that we saw in some of these large
Well,
companies.
there's no doubt that the panic, the panic was real. I mean, and Nvidia's price is sort of kind of settling back, maybe moving up. I mean, the 17% was day one, and I think it gained some traction back that really literally the next day. And I don't know that the guidance on
I don't think
Nvidia has
everybody
changed.
still knows. I don't think everybody still knows really how DeepSeek actually
Well,
works.
that's my concern. Is that it's
Are we
like this is
still
smoke. This is an example of smoke, in a market, and how like I think we want to trust, in theory that the people that manage massive portfolios and think that they know more than the average investor, and they do,
I
but
I,
but
I
not that
sure
much more. I
I
mean,
sure hope I sure hope so, right? I
yeah.
sure hope so. I mean, this idea that perhaps um, you know uh, there might have been some data theft involved.
Oh,
There's no specific evidence of anything yet. There's just a bunch of allegations that perhaps DeepSeek may have copied technology or trained its models on existing models. And I
yeah.
mean, there's all this stuff out there, and we really don't know the truth yet. And maybe I don't know the truth. I'm going to definitely investigate a little bit more. Um, but ultimately, where there's smoke, there's fire,
Yeah.
right?
Can be. Can be. I think it's worth. Look, it's a fun conversation. I think it was sort of already in terms of for investors. It's in the early running for story of the year, and I think it's something we're just gonna have to keep an eye on. Appreciate your thoughts as always, Doctor O.
Pleasure.
For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics wherever you get your podcast, and make sure you listen to Orphe and me every week on the Center Square Radio Hour.